Hello everyone, now we begin with something that might sound like fiction, until you realize it's unfolding in towns just like yours, maybe even right next door. You're staring at a rust-colored mailbox at the end of a cracked driveway, and it's empty. Again. The air smells like dry grass and dust. It's the third Tuesday of the month, and that means a check should have arrived, pension, disability, the kind of thing you don't just forget about. But nothing. And you, standing there in that worn-out flannel, can feel it like a gut punch. Not the missing money. Not even the inconvenience. It's the quiet. That thick, cruel kind of quiet that makes you feel like your name never meant anything at all. You probably won't survive this story without having your assumptions torn down, rebuilt, and maybe humbled a little, so, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from. Now, relax, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise. And let's get into today's story. You're a veteran. Served 2 tours. Desert boots in the dust. A bullet once kissed your ribs, and your left shoulder still aches when it rains. Your pension isn't some luxury, it's your food, your lights, your meds. And this is the second month it's vanished. You call the bank. Then the VA. Then the bank again. And what do you get? We're looking into it. Have you checked your online portal? Maybe someone else picked it up for you. That last one sticks. You live alone. Always have, since your wife passed. No one's picking anything up for you. But the teller's voice is already moving on, dismissive, sugary smooth. You start writing names down. Dates. You've learned that discipline from somewhere most people wouldn't understand unless they've had to memorize radio call signs under fire. It's not paranoia. It's pattern recognition, something drilled into you in a past life. When ignoring patterns could get someone killed, the local branch finally agrees to look into it more seriously. A manager pulls up a scan of a cashed check. There's a signature on it. Not yours. Not even close, and now comes the silence, not the good kind. Not the kind you learn to breathe through in between heartbeats, before you squeezed a trigger. This is the corporate kind. Cold. Legal. Defensive. We'll escalate the issue. They say that like it's an elevator. But you know it's more like an oubliette. 3 days pass. Then 7. You start rationing your blood pressure meds. What they don't realize, what almost no one realizes, is that you've spent your life knowing how to wait. Waiting isn't weakness. It's patience with a plan, and during those silent nights, when the only sound is the loose gutter creaking outside your window, you start making some calls. Not to lawyers. Not to local press. To old friends. Brothers and sisters who also wear the scars beneath civvies. Men and women who still address you by your rank, even if it's been 20 years since the uniform fit properly. You're not calling for help. You're calling because something about this smells off. Someone didn't just cash your check, they knew how to forge just enough of a signature to pass. Someone local. Someone who thought you wouldn't notice. And worse, someone counting on the fact that you wouldn't be believed. There's a young guy down the road, Jose. He's the one who mows your yard on weekends without being asked. Afghanistan vet. Marine. Has trouble sleeping too. You ask him for a ride into town, just to keep things low-key. He doesn't ask questions. Just nods, and tells you to grab a hat. Something about his silence says he already knows this isn't about groceries. The town bank sits in a corner plaza next to a vape store and a Dollar Tree. You walk in with Jose at your side. And suddenly, the smiles freeze. The teller looks up, recognizes you. The manager pretends not to. You ask for a copy of the cashed check again. They hesitate. You ask again, calmly, then they hand it over. There it is. The date. The forged signature. The branch location. It was cashed right here. In person, you look at Jose. He takes a photo with his phone, no flash. Now something else happens. Something rare. You spot fear, not in your own gut. But in the eyes of the clerk, because someone else has just entered the bank, a man in a black polo. Civilian. But not soft. He has the walk. You know it instantly. His haircut's fresh, but it doesn't hide the fact that he's scanned every angle of this room in 3 seconds, He walks past you and speaks quietly to the manager. You can't hear the words, but you recognize the tone. This is the part most people never see. The part where justice doesn't show up in flashing lights. It arrives in whispers. In looks. In patterns changing under pressure. You leave the bank. You wait. You go back to your porch with a glass of water and a notebook open on your lap. The check was stolen. But not just stolen, laundered through the very place meant to protect your finances. That's more than theft. It's betrayal. You sit with it, then Jose gets a text, 3 words, it's in motion. You don't ask what, but a day later, 3 SUVs roll into town. Black. Matte finished. No license plates, not fast. Not reckless. Just deliberate. They park outside a small office above the vape shop, where the bank's private paperwork processing happens, and that's when the real story begins. You watch from your porch, legs stiff from years of too many marches and too few warm-ups. The SUVs sit silent for a while. No one gets out. Not at first. It's like they're studying the town, letting it breathe, letting it show its cards. You know that tactic. Let the target sweat. Let them wonder if they've been caught or if this is just a coincidence. Then the doors open, synchronized, no hesitation, 6 people. Not young, not old. The kind of age where scars have hardened but knees haven't quite given up. No uniforms, but you see it anyway. One wears a ball cap that says Fallujah, 2004. Another has a gait that screams, paratrooper, knees blown at 35. You don't even need to guess. These are vets, but this isn't some Hollywood revenge squad. There are no weapons. No shouting. Just quiet efficiency. They move like they've done this before, not the intimidation, but the investigation, and that's exactly what this is. You sip from your glass and lean back. They're not here for chaos. They're here for truth. Let's back up for a moment. Because this doesn't start with a convoy, it starts with a habit. You spent years, maybe decades, honing instincts most people will never understand. Like how you can tell if someone's lying not by their words, but by the way they breathe before they speak. Or how every building has a weak point, a shadow, an angle. And you learned long ago that some wars are fought with bullets, but the worst ones? They're fought with silence. With neglect. With bureaucratic shrugs. That's what this is, but while you waited those silent years post-service, while the world scrolled past you, forgot you, and moved on, other people didn't forget. Other veterans didn't forget, that's why they showed up. You recognize the leader of the group now. Samir. You served with him for 6 months overseas. Quiet back then, just like now. A man who kept photos of his daughters inside his helmet. He'd gone civilian after his 3rd deployment and found work doing security consulting. Legit, but serious. The kind of guy who still reads maps when everyone else is checking their phones. He catches your eye from across the road. Offers a single nod, that's all. No salute. No explanation. The team enters the building. 22 minutes later, a young man stumbles out. Civilian. Maybe late 20s. Shirt untucked, eyes wide, mouth trying to catch up with his thoughts. He gets into a compact car and drives off too fast for a 25-mile zone. You know that look. That's the look of someone who's been given a choice. Not by force. Not by threats, by evidence. Jose joins you on the porch, holding a box of gas station donuts. Everything okay? He asks. Not yet, you reply. But it's starting. Back in that little bank, behind the tinted windows and motivational posters, someone was running a game. It was small at first, just shaving off interest, rounding down deposits. Processing delays that always seemed to correct themselves. But it escalated. One of the junior clerks figured out how to redirect physical checks to a third-party PO box. Just one a month. Just enough to not trigger alerts. Yours was number 5, but you weren't like the others. You kept records. You followed up. You noticed the pattern, and, more importantly, you had the network. The armored convoy wasn't military. Not technically. It was a private team. Retired vets. Some cybersecurity. Some accounting. One woman who used to work forensic audits for federal contracts. They'd banded together 5 years ago, after a buddy's death was ruled natural causes when in truth, his medication was stolen and resold by a caregiver. That's how it usually happens. Quiet theft. Paper cuts. The kind that kill slow and get buried even slower. They made it their mission to uncover it. No violence. No threats. Just full-spectrum pressure. Legal. Public. Relentless. You remember the first time you saw a kid get caught stealing in boot camp. It wasn't a fight. The instructors didn't shout. They just made sure everyone knew. The thief was alone from that day on. Invisible. And the silence that followed? That was worse than any punishment. That's what happens next. Within 48 hours, the young bank clerk resigns. Quietly. A statement is released to local news about irregularities in check handling. The bank offers to personally deliver your check the next month, with a formal apology letter signed by a regional director, but that's not what matters most. A week later, you're at the diner. Same corner booth. Same weak coffee, a woman across the room pays for your breakfast. You've never spoken to her before, but she gives you a look that says more than words can. The mail starts coming on time. People wave a little longer. Jose gets a part-time job running errands for elderly vets in the area. The convoy leaves town quietly, without fanfare, just as they arrived, but things feel different now, more alert. Less alone. You sit on your porch again one night, moon hanging low like a watchful eye. The air smells like fall coming early. And you realize something, you weren't just a victim of theft, you were a test of what this place would tolerate. Of whether someone like you, quiet, older, alone, could be erased by paperwork and digital indifference, and that test didn't go the way they thought it would, because behind every invisible vet is a chain of brothers and sisters who've learned how to track, plan, and act without raising a fist. You didn't ask for justice, but it came anyway, in matte black SUVs, on silent tires, with eyes that see what others overlook. You never hear what happened to the young man with the forged signature. Not officially. There's no trial, no arrest record posted on the town bulletin, and no front-page exposé in the county paper. But you hear things, whispers over breakfast, fragments of stories told with sidelong glances and lowered voices. Someone said he took a job in another state, someone else said he was offered a deal, full cooperation in exchange for silence, but the real question isn't where he went, it's how deep it went. 3 days after the armored convoy rolled out, you get a package. No return address, just your name printed cleanly on the front. Inside is a manila folder, no dramatic seal, no government stamps. Just a quiet stack of copied documents, all dated, annotated, and color-coded. Someone's been busy. You sit down, breath shallow, eyes narrowing the way they used to when maps were spread out over hoods under desert sun. Page 1, a bank internal memo describing check consolidation protocols. Page 2, a spreadsheet showing monthly pension payments, listing amounts that don't quite match the deposits listed in recipient accounts. Page 3, email threads between mid-level employees, one of them noting that older clients rarely double-check. There it is. In ink. In the careless overconfidence of the unscrupulous, older clients rarely double-check. You run your thumb along the paper's edge. This isn't just about you. Back when you first joined the service, you learned 2 things fast. 1, always check your 6. 2, some people only understand consequences when they're wrapped in paperwork and procedure. You pick up the phone. Not to call Samir, he wouldn't answer. That part of the game's done. He's moved on. But there's a name in the folder, Monica Daltrey, the woman who handled internal audits for the Veterans Convoy Group. She left her contact info, scribbled in pen at the bottom of one document. Just 2 words, in case you need more, so you call. She answers after 2 rings, calm. Professional. Not friendly, but respectful. The way someone speaks when they already know who you are and what you've been through. You ask her one question, how many others? There's a pause, then she tells you, 6, in your county. 3 more in the neighboring one. All older veterans. All had irregularities in their accounts over the past 9 months. And here's the part that tightens your gut, none of them had complained. Not once, not because they didn't notice, because they didn't think it would matter. Monica pauses again. Then she says something you won't forget, we don't fix broken systems. We light a torch under them so people stop walking in blind. That night, you don't sleep much, not from anger, but purpose. You've been silent long enough. The next morning, you show up at the VFW hall. The floors smell like mop water and old beer. You haven't been in here in years. It always felt like a room full of ghosts, some friendly, most not. But today, you walk in and take a seat at the front without waiting for an invite. People glance up. A few nod. You hold up the manila folder. This is happening, you say. To more of us than you think. You don't raise your voice, you don't need to. By the time you finish reading the memo aloud, the room is dead quiet. One man takes off his cap and sets it on the table. A woman in the back wipes her eyes. This isn't just about theft anymore, it's about dignity. About being seen. About making sure the system that wore you down in your 20s doesn't get to erase you in your 70s. You form a small group. You don't call it a task force, that feels too stiff, too bureaucratic. You call it what Jose suggests, the roll call. Every vet in town who wants to be part of it, active or not, signs in. Once a week, they go through their accounts. Every line. Every charge. They call each other if something doesn't look right. Not to complain, but to verify. You build a network, not just for catching fraud, but for remembering each other. The local bank starts getting requests. A lot of them. Can I get a printed statement? I'd like to see a copy of my cashed checks. I want to talk to a branch manager, not the teller. And it shifts something, not just fear, accountability, because now, the forgotten are looking back. You remember when you were in the desert, and a buddy once told you, justice doesn't come in a uniform. It comes in routine. Eyes open. Heads counted. No one left behind. At the time, you thought he meant patrols. Now you know better. This isn't about vengeance. Or even punishment. It's about sending a quiet message. We're not invisible. They tried to steal money from veterans because they thought the system wouldn't care, but they forgot one thing: veterans know how to navigate systems. Even broken ones. Especially broken ones, because we've had to. One afternoon, you get another letter, handwritten this time. The return address is from 3 counties over. Sir, it begins, I wanted to thank you for speaking up at the VFW. I checked my dad's account after that meeting. Turns out, they were pulling $42 a month in processing fees that didn't exist. He wouldn't have caught it. He wouldn't have said anything. You place the letter beside the others that have started arriving, notes of thanks. Copies of receipts, printouts of fixed balances, and then you reach for your pen, you write back, not because you have to, because someone once did the same for you. It starts to snow, not heavy, not yet, just the kind of slow, silent snow that floats instead of falls, like it's asking permission to land. You stand at your front window with a mug of coffee and watch the flakes gather on the power lines like stubborn birds. Across the street, someone's nailing up a wooden sign in front of the bank. It reads, under new management. You smile, but it's not satisfaction. It's recognition. The kind you get after a successful mission, not because you brought down a target, but because the system, for once, corrected course. Quietly. Without credit, you know who made that happen. You didn't file lawsuits. You didn't stage protests, you just made it impossible to ignore. But then comes the hard part, because exposure is one thing. Repair is another. A new manager doesn't change years of damage overnight. And the habits of veterans, especially the quiet, private ones, don't bend easily. Trust is a muscle that's torn too many times. So, you start doing something strange for a man like you start talking more, at the post office. At the grocery store. At the bus stop near the community center. You ask people, older folks mostly, everything all right with your checks? You say it casually, like you're asking about the weather. At first, some stiffen. They think you're prying, but then someone says, now that you mention it, there was a delay last month. And that's how it starts. Not a flood. A trickle. You find that people want to talk. They just need someone to go first. One woman, Alice, says she hasn't seen her grandson in over a year, but somehow her savings account shows regular debit card withdrawals at a gas station 2 towns over. She doesn't drive. Another man, Walt, tells you the government overpaid him by mistake once, then sent collectors after him when he tried to return the funds. Said they couldn't process reimbursements, so they hit him with interest. You take notes. Not for revenge. For patterns, because patterns are where truth hides, and with every story that comes in, you realize, this isn't just about money. It's about how the system sees you, as disposable, forgettable, background noise. You were trained to stand in formation, to follow commands, to complete missions even when your hands were shaking. But no one trained you for this, for being dismissed, for being treated like a glitch. And that's why the armored convoy mattered, not because it fixed everything, but because it proved someone was still watching, still willing to step in. You get a call one night from a woman named Tanya. She's in her 60s, retired Air Force, moved into town a few months ago to be closer to her daughter. She heard about what you started. She asks if she can help. You ask her what she did in the service. Signals intelligence, she says. I read mail for a living, basically. Perfect. Within a week, she's built a small database, handwritten, color-coded, tracking every known case of suspicious account activity among local vets. She doesn't touch the internet. Doesn't trust it. She keeps the files in an old filing cabinet in her living room and refers to it like a war room. She calls it the archive. Between your porch, the VFW hall, and Tanya's living room, a triangle forms. You start hosting what Jose jokingly calls preemptive poker nights. No cards are dealt. Just people. Talking. Comparing notes. Reviewing bank statements, utility bills. VA communications, it's simple, it's powerful, it's what the system should have done on its own, but that doesn't mean everyone's happy about it. A letter arrives. No return address. The envelope smells faintly of cologne. Inside, a folded sheet of paper with typed words, back off. You're not helping anyone. You laugh. Not because it's funny, but because it's lazy. No name. No threat. Just the weak bravado of someone used to not being watched. You burn the letter in your fire pit, then you go back to the porch and write another note to a widow named Louise who just got a $113 refund from a closed medical account, money she wouldn't have seen without the roll call reviewing her documents line by line. That's the thing about cowardice, it only works when no one answers back. In December, a man named Daniel stops you outside the diner. He's big, slow-spoken, probably 80 if he's a day, says he saw the convoy that day. Says he watched it from the American Legion parking lot. Never said anything until now, then he reaches into his coat and hands you a faded Polaroid. It's from the 70s. For men in fatigues, sitting on a tank, smiling like they've just tricked the devil out of his lunch. One of them is you. Young, angular, cocky. He taps the photo. That guy never stopped fighting, he says. You feel your throat tighten, because he's wrong. That guy did stop, for a while, until someone reminded him how to pick it back up. The convoy never returned. It didn't need to. What it left behind was louder than a dozen armored vehicles. It left behind questions, awareness. It gave people permission to say, I think something's wrong, without fear of being dismissed or patronized. It built a culture of quiet courage. Of daily defense, and it reminded you, and everyone else, that not all battles are fought with bullets, some are fought with bank statements, and some are won with conversations. You sip your coffee. Looking at the street, you wonder how many more towns like yours are out there, how many more veterans are waiting, quietly, for someone to knock first. Spring returns with the smell of wet asphalt and freshly cut grass, and for the first time in years, it feels like something has truly shifted. The changes aren't plastered across billboards or echoed in campaign speeches, but they're real. Measurable. Quiet victories stacking up like pebbles in a jar. At the VFW hall, roll call now meets twice a month, and every chair is full. Tanya brings cookies. Jose jokes more. Even the grumpier old-timers, guys who once grunted instead of speaking, now arrive early, ready with folded papers. Highlighted bank statements, and yes, a few too many war stories. But they've earned that. One afternoon, a younger man shows up. Maybe mid-30s. Not a veteran. Just nervous, holding a check in his hand. Says he's been helping his uncle, a Korean War vet who never learned to read. They've been watching the videos, he says, your videos. The ones that started when this story did. And now they're checking everything, every week. Just in case, that's how far this has reached. And that's when you realize, the convoy never really left. It just changed shape, now it looks like checklists. It sounds like shared stories. It rides in the minds of people who refuse to be forgotten, but there's one more piece to this, something unfinished. You still have that folder. The original one. With the internal emails and annotated memos and timelines showing exactly when the theft began. It's been sitting in your drawer, untouched since the first few weeks, until today. You open it again, not to remember, but to make peace, you go through every page, and something clicks. One particular memo you didn't focus on before now glows like a flare. It's a schedule. A timeline for pilot testing withdrawal permissions across senior checking accounts. And next to the trial cities, you see them, yours, and 6 others. It wasn't random, it was calculated. These weren't crimes of opportunity, they were trials. You send a copy to Monica. 3 days later, she sends you a response, just a sentence: "You were right to look deeper." And attached? A letter from a federal compliance agency. It reads, "We have initiated a broader investigation into unauthorized access and potential exploitation of protected beneficiaries across 8 regions. Your documents were critical in triggering this review." That's it, no fanfare. No parades, just validation, the kind that doesn't come often in this life, but when it does, it changes everything. You walk out to your porch again, folder finally empty, it feels lighter. You feel lighter, the town looks the same, familiar houses, kids on bikes, dogs barking behind picket fences, but you see it all differently now, because this time, you helped protect it, not with a rifle, but with resistance. You didn't want to be a symbol. You still don't, you just wanted one simple thing, for those who serve not to be easy prey, and now, they're not here. There's a story you haven't told anyone yet, happened a few weeks ago. You got a call from the sheriff's office, new guy, recently elected, eager to clean up what the last administration overlooked. Said he'd heard of you through a town hall meeting and wanted to pass something along. Apparently, one of the former bank staffers who'd taken early retirement had written a confession. Nothing dramatic, just a journal entry left behind after moving states. In it, they described the scheme as routine. Said they didn't feel bad, because most victims never noticed. You didn't need the confession, but hearing it made everything real, even after the convoy, even after the roll call. There were still some people out there, unrepentant, remorseless, counting on silence, but they underestimated something critical: veterans know how to wait, and how to strike when it matters. And then, one final call, Samir, his number flashes on your phone, and you hesitate. It's been months. You thought you'd never hear from him again. When you answer, his voice is quiet. Tired, he says he took the deal, testified, named names, walked away. Says he spends his time now caring for his grandfather, a vet himself, who used to say quiet doesn't mean weak. Samir says he's trying to make amends. He asks if you hate him. You don't answer right away, because the truth is, you did, but now, you feel something different, not forgiveness. Not exactly, but understanding. You tell him, make it count. Every day. For the people who can't anymore. He doesn't speak again, but he stays on the line for a few more seconds before hanging up. You don't hear from him again. You don't need to, because some debts aren't repaid in words, they're paid in choices. And now we arrive, at last, at the lesson. It wasn't about the money. It never was. It was about what happens when people assume veterans don't pay attention. When they mistake silence for absence. When they confuse fading uniforms for fading minds. They forgot that even after the war ends, the watch never really does. And sometimes, when the world least expects it, an armored convoy shows up, not to punish, but to remind everyone that behind every veteran's quiet eyes is a memory sharp enough to slice through deception. You don't forget betrayal, but you also don't forget kindness, or the power of being believed. So the next time someone tells you that all the real battles are over, you tell them this story. Tell them what happened when they stole a veteran's money, and the convoy came. Let's slow down for a second, let the adrenaline fade, let the noise fall back into silence. Take a breath, deep, from the bottom of the lungs, the kind they taught you when everything was chaos, and you had to make your heartbeat your ally, not your enemy, because even in this story, this one with armored trucks, forged documents, and quiet justice, what you're left with isn't the anger, it's the clarity, the feeling that, no matter how old the boots or how long ago the mission, there's still something worth standing up for. Still some wrongs that won't go unanswered. Still people, like you, who understand that integrity doesn't retire. Let that settle in your chest like warmth. And know that if you've ever felt invisible, or unheard, or like your service stopped mattering the moment you stepped off base, it didn't. You're still part of something, and you always will be. So, wherever you are, whether it's a front porch in Tennessee, a downtown apartment in Seattle, or a farmhouse in the Midwest, look around and know this: there are more of us, watching. Listening. Protecting each other in ways big and small, and maybe, just maybe, someone's already setting up a roll call near you. Stay safe. Stay seen, and never stop watching the road.